way, in a way that you're also able to support the youth in your communities that you need. We have currently unprecedented numbers of youth on waiting lists to get into programs. We have an incredible shortage of staff in after-school programs, and we are in dire need of additional support and resources for programs so that we can make sure that we're serving as many kids as we possibly can. And so today we'll be going over the Utah legislative system and budget overview, as well as crafting messages. This is information that both Senator Escamilla and Representative Romero will be sharing with us. And then we'll be going over a few UAN resources as well to talk about what we have to offer, as well as some national resources that we have out there as well. And so something that you can pull up as well is the Utah State Legislature website. There's a QR code here for that. We're going to be going over some of the resources and things that you can find on those websites a little bit here today. So go ahead and pull that up if you'd like to look at things at your leisure as things are being shared with us today. So I'm going to quickly move over to some slides that have been shared by Senator Escamilla as well, and then we're going to go through those. Okay, so with that being said, Senator Escamilla and Representative Romero, thank you both again for being here today. We're really excited to hear everything that you have to say, and you can go ahead and take it away.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Ben, and good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to co-present with my colleague and minority leader now in the House, Representative Angela Romero, and myself. I'm Luz Escamilla, State Senator for Senate District 10 as of January the 1st. Before that was Senate District 1. We went to some changing numbers after redistricting process. Just so you get an idea, my district is the northwest quadrant of Salt Lake City. And I have about a little bit more than half of West Valley City and the entire city of Magna in my district. So it's a pretty diverse district in all different identities that you can imagine. And obviously after school programming with the number of kiddos we have in my district is a key priority. And it's been a pleasure to be part of the after school program network, and actually at one point codified evidence-based after-school programming in our state code as a first step towards recognizing that this is a statewide issue that needs to be worked at all levels. So just really excited for this opportunity to be here. And I'm also the minority leader in the Utah Senate Democrats, so excited for this opportunity. I'll pass the time to my colleague so she can introduce herself, and then we'll go into this presentation, and you'll see us going back and forth with our expertise in different areas. So from here, Representative Romero, take it away.
Thank you, Senator Escamilla. I actually didn't want to put on my reading glasses because I don't want people to think we were the same person. But yeah, my name is Angela Romero, and I represent House District 25, formerly House District 26. And so I used to represent mostly Salt Lake City, but my district and the boundaries have changed. So majority of my district now is West Valley City. And as Senator Escamilla and I had mentioned, her and I have known each other since college, and we've been organizing together for many, many years when it comes to out of school time, even before we were in the legislature. So we look forward to co-presenting today.
Thank you. Thanks, Representative. So one of the things I wanted to just put in perspective is our legislative timeline, because I think it just encompasses how chaotic things get in the Utah State Legislature. We're one of the shortest legislatures in the country. We're not the shortest in terms of time, but one of the shortest. We basically review about 1,000 pieces of legislation and balance a budget of soon to be $23 billion budget within 7 weeks. It's a lot of work. So just picture the amount of pieces that need to come into place to pass about 500 out of the 1,000 bills that we review and balance a budget of $23 billion. That's what we're expecting for this next session. And all of that happens in 7 weeks. We start on the Tuesday, January the 17th. We end on Friday, March the 3rd, which will be our last day of the session. So, and We don't obviously meet in the weekend, so just keep that in mind. And I think we do have President's Day in between, so there will be a day where we're not meeting. So all of this needs to take place, and it's very fast paced, and it will not stop, like to try to get people on board. Like, it just moves really fast. So we do have what we call a citizen legislature, meaning all of our legislature is comprised by people that are not per se full-time politicians, meaning all of them have a profession, and they probably do have a full-time job on the side, which is the case of both Representative Romero and myself. And I will say about 80% or more of our state legislature. And we have everything from doctors, attorneys, engineers, teachers, stay-home moms as well. We have individuals like Representative Romero that has a vast experience as a public administrator in local government. Myself, I was in banking for 14 years. I now have my own business and run multiple businesses. So we come with a very diverse background. So next, please, on the presentation. Just to get an idea of what we do, and I'll start with budget, and then I'll pass the time for Representative Romero to add into this. For the last 10 years, I've been the main person in my caucus negotiating the state budget. And it's probably one of the things that people take for granted of how important our work is in the legislature. Our number one priority in terms of what our responsibility is as the state legislature is to balance a budget every year. We would not leave this place without balancing a budget. It's something that we feel really strongly. We run the budget in the state. Here is the state legislature. And so you guys get an idea. These are just little snapshot information of what happens right before we start the session. And when I say what happens before, there is what we call the Executive Appropriations Committee. That is the most powerful committee in the state legislature regarding budget and fiscal related issues. And both Representative Romero and myself, as members of leadership, and in this case as minority leaders, we have a seat on this committee. And it's literally where it's the final piece before it goes to the final vote at both chambers when it comes to balancing our budget and making any fiscal decisions. So you get an idea. For example, the Executive Appropriations Committee that met in December, which was the last meeting we had as legislators, just projecting some of our forecasts for the 2023 fiscal year. And we're projecting, like I said, $23 billion for this next year. We have conversations, obviously, sales taxes, individual income taxes. That's what makes our budget, basically, plus whatever federal funds we get. Next, please. On the next, thank you. So you get an idea, and this will be obviously sharing. You guys can share this. It gets you an idea of how we see a report from the Utah Tax Commission, for example, on our monthly revenue summary. And you'll see this is again, tax commission. This is just coming in terms of our sales and use tax, individual taxes, our income taxes that we'll pay, and our transportation fund, which are basically our biggest pieces of state tax, state income coming to us. Next, please. So before we end on this budget conversation, one of the really interesting things we have is the legislature has its own website. And I think Ben made reference to this website. And by the way, hands down, we have the best website in the country. We actually been receiving awards and recognitions for having the most friendly website in the nation. And as sometimes when I end up visiting other state legislatures' website, I'm like, yeah, we have the best one. So I don't say that lightly. We do have a great website. And part of what we have in that website is very interactive, and you can have it, in your phone. I mean, I encourage you guys to use this website both on your computer and the phone. It's super friendly both ways. And you can not only follow bills, which I think most people are used to it. And that's what most people jump into because the media covers mostly bills versus like revenue and budget questions. But we actually have a really, really key interactive, seriously hands-on customer experience piece on our website, and that's COBE, which is a compendium of budget information. This is available for everyone. And again, it's in an interactive process. And what it does, our COBE, so you'll hear this word if you're in the legislature, COBE this, that's basically the details Utah State budget and related financial authorization. So everything is there. And you can see, graphs, you can see like information, you can see budget pages, and it contains summaries of issues faced by legislators, performance measures, background information, all of it is in COBE. So you can find that in the website, and you can find that whether you're using a phone or your computer. And again, what we're predicting for our fiscal year 2023-2024, which is what we're going to be dealing in starting next week, is a budget of $23.54 billion with a B. It's a big budget, and I know maybe compared to other states like California or bigger states, it may be nothing, but for us, a small state of 3.2 million people, it's a big budget. And you can see just here, for example, how do we divide that budget between general fund, income tax fund, transportation investment fund, federal funds, which is obviously a very large portion that comes to our state budget. All of those federal funds are mostly Medicaid. So some of the education, but mostly Medicaid, so health, dedicated credits, other and local education revenue, which we also collect some of those. So all of that is part of what we will be balancing the budget before the end of the session. And with that, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Representative Romero, with regards to budget process.
Usually I leave the budget to Senator Escamilla. I'm more of the policy and strategy when it comes to policy and whipping votes. And so I think she did an excellent job with the budget. And with the budget, you just never know what could happen, because I think a lot of people think when the governor presents his budget, they think that that's what the budget will be. The governor doesn't hold the purse strings, we do. And so I think a lot of times people get that mixed up, where they're like, well, the governor said we're going to do this, but the governor at the end of the day doesn't make the final decision on the budget. It is us, the legislature. And so that's why it's critical that we work with our Republican colleagues from across the aisle to ensure that we're getting the funding we need for the projects that we feel make Utah better. And I think the one thing I'd like to distinguish too in regards to the budget is we have bills that have fiscal notes on them. So those bills will hopefully be funded out of bills and bills. And then we have people that make an appropriation request, which doesn't necessarily have to go through the entire legislature like a bill would. It goes before an appropriation committee. And so those are some of the inner workings of how we get our bills funded, but also if we're not running a bill, we can also get a project funded through the appropriation process, which eventually makes its way up to the Executive Appropriations Committee.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative Romero. You're absolutely right. You will hear some terminology, and maybe next time we should put a glossary in place of terminology of the legislature. One is every bill, regardless of the size of the bill, will have a fiscal note. And that fiscal note could say zero, right? Many bills have no fiscal note, meaning zero fiscal note. What it means is that there is no going to be any state expenditure. We will not expend any money if we pass that bill, but most bills will have some fiscal impact. So that's a fiscal note. And when you open a bill in the website, you're going to see us on the side, fiscal note. Be very aware that when you're talking about a bill, the fiscal note is critical because you may have the best idea in the world, but if it's going to cost half of our state budget, it's probably not going to happen. So fiscal notes are critical. The other piece is what Representative Romero just mentioned, is what we call an RFA. And those are those fiscal requests that all they need is intent language, but they will not codify it or be on statute. So those are the ones where we can, for example, increase a piece of a line item in the budget, and you just want extra funds for that program or that specific line item, or just one-time specific appropriation request. Those are called RFAs. So you're going to hear this terminology if you're in the legislature. Just know a bill will have a fiscal note, and then you have those individual RFAs. And with that, I'll pass the time to Representative Romero.
One more thing too is yes. That if somebody on the other side wants to kill your bill, they can ensure that there's a high fiscal number on that bill. And so it's always interesting to see how the fiscal note impacts whether a piece of legislation passes or not.
Yeah, so it goes beyond the policy. clearly a fiscal impact also drives the outcome of a piece of legislation. So like, again, you may have the best policy in place, but if it's not financially doable to, pay for it, we are very different from Washington, D.C., and we do not pass any bills if we cannot balance a budget. So with that, Representative Romero, do you want to jump into just now bills and that process?
Yeah, and I'm keeping track of time because we have to be somewhere else at 11 o'clock and it'll take us about 5 to 10 minutes to walk there. So when it comes to bills, as you watch the news and you read the headlines, you're going to see different issues concerned. One of the biggest issues that we hear kind of going before us that impacts many of the population we work with is transgender youth, and just legislation that's either for or against that. And so when you're talking about a particular policy issue, and I apologize for not looking ahead of time and identifying which after school or out of school time legislation we have, you'll want to make sure that you're talking directly to your particular legislature. It's important to contact every legislator, but I prioritize the people that live in my district. So when anyone's emailing me about a particular bill, I want to know where they live, so I prioritize them because I prioritize the people that elected me. And so a lot of times organizations will write these emails for you, and then you just paste your name in there and you send it off. And so when an email is not personalized, even if it's for a cause that I believe in, I'm going to give you back a standard email. So if you're not going to take the time to write out an email, and it doesn't even have to be a long email where your individual voice is, I'm going to give you the same thing you gave me on where my stance is on that. But that's just me personally, and that's how I do things. I really think it's important to speak from the heart, especially when you're advocating for issues surrounding young people and providing more out of school time or providing more funding so that we can have, we can pay staff a living wage when they're working with our young people. And so I think it's really, really important to get to your point. It doesn't have to be fluffy, or give a reason why you're passionate about that particular issue. It doesn't even have to be about the issues that we care about. The other thing is, I can't speak for all representatives, and I'm not saying that some representatives aren't nice when they respond back to you. But I always tell people, even if you really strongly disagree with someone and you think they're a big jerk, I think it's really important to, when you email them, make sure that your emotion is left out of that email. You can show your passion still, but when you attack someone, you tell them they're stupid. I get told I'm stupid all the time. Or you call them names, they're just not going to pay attention to you, and you might be doing a disservice to the issue you're trying to advocate for. And time is, I'm going over kind of what we have here. Time is essential because it's really important to kind of keep track of bills, because bills can just come and go like immediately. It depends if people are playing games. And so it's really important to be able to track legislation when you're working with the After School Alliance or other organizations, so that you make sure that somebody is up here to testify on behalf of the bill and talk about why it's so important. COVID changed the way we do our committee meetings. And so we now have a hybrid model as well. And so people don't actually have to come up here to the Capitol. A lot of times we'll take constituent feedback off of, from Zoom. And so there are many options now for you to participate in the political process. And I just want to remind you that we as legislators, we're a citizen legislature. We're just like everyone else. We have a fancy title, of course, and we get paid, like about $12,000 a year to, do another full-time job. So I just want to remind you that your voice is important, and it's our job to listen to you, because you are the citizens of Utah, and you're the reason why we're up here. And we're also open to answering any questions, but this session is going to be really interesting for us in the House. We've had a high turnover. So we have 15 new members. Out of those 15 new members, one of them are Democrat. And so for us, me as a minority leader, I'm working with our one Democrat to identify who her colleagues are, to get to know them, because I think most importantly for us, we're here to represent all Utahns. And in order for us as Democrats, because we're the Democrats, to pass legislation, we have to have buy-in for our Republican colleagues. And so the same thing has to happen for advocacy groups and organizations that are lobbying for issues that they care about. You need to have buy-in from everyone, and you have to ensure that your issue is I always say, human rights issue, and that it's something that we all need and we all need to be respectful of. And so although you may not agree with somebody on all different issues, you never know where you're in agree with them on something else. I'll give you a perfect example. For those of you who have followed the legislature for a long time, he hasn't been in the legislature in about 6 years, but his name was Mike Noel. And if you just Google his name, you'll see all kinds of interesting things pop up about public lands and calling people rock lickers. He's just an interesting character. And so he did not support my political ideologies. He and I were polar opposites, but he was really passionate about sexual assault, which is what my area expertise is, because someone in his family had been sexually assaulted. But because I took the time to have those conversations with him and learn about his concerns and address my bills, he happened to be the rules chair. I had a human trafficking bill that was late in getting numbered and was late to the game. He, as the rules chair, decided it didn't need to be vetted by the rules committee, and he sent it directly to committee. And so relationships are important. And so you never know who's going to be your ally on one particular issue and be you're not your ally on another issue. So I always remind people, don't personalize things, don't stereotype people, because you never know where you two will agree. And at the end of the day, this is not about us as individuals or political parties. This is about us doing the best job for Utahns, and in your particular case, making sure that we have funding for out of school time, because we're in such need for more services for our young families, for individuals, and also for many of you who work in this field to be paid the wage that you need to be paid in order to serve our youth. And so that is kind of a fast 101 on communicating with legislatures and legislative members. It's really about get to know who your legislator is. And, you know, there are some legislators that are just going to be jerks, but that doesn't, I would say majority aren't. And it's just identifying those commonalities so that you can have a conversation with them. Because if I know the people who email me, if they're emailing me more than once, I know the people that, you know, ask me to meet with them. And so I'm more inclined to listen to them because I know who they are. I know they're my constituent, and I know that they're really engaged in the process.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative Romero. Now I'll just pick up from there and add some pieces. You mentioned something interesting. There is an issue of respect and trust that you're trying to build in this process. And I would just say that, you know, an engaged citizen should build a relationship with their elected officials. So I'll just put it out there to start thinking, how many of you actually know who your House representative is and who's your state senator? Unfortunately, most people have no idea who they are, and there may be actually your next door neighbor for all you know, or someone that attends the same religious congregation with you, or their kids may go to school with your kids and you may have no idea. And this is kind of like the beauty of a citizen legislature, that this, you know, all of us are, you know, like I said, not only do we have professions and are part of different industries and areas of expertise, we also have kids, and our kids go to school with your kids. And, you know, there's this interaction. You may see them in your local grocery store, you know, and other stuff. So that's allows you to have this. And again, you can find your legislature in that website, le.utah.gov, and you just put your address, comes up, their bio, profile, their picture, and I'll get to the picture conversation and why that's important, and their information, so you can contact them. So usually what happens is people panic when a bill is out, and we should see more people being reactionary to what they can perceive as a bad piece of public policy, and that's when they engage. My suggestion is to build a relationship with your legislators during interim, right after the session, when there's more time just introduce yourself and send my name, send an email or a text. Text works better for me sometimes, just because we're getting thousands of emails a day, and texting is important. If you say, I'm your constituent, I live, this is my address, I want to talk to you or introduce myself and the work I do in after school programming or after school services. Just doing that, your legislator will be like, oh, I remember my constituent that works in that area. So when something comes up, they may even contact you as an expert in that area. So that type of building relationship is so critical. And then keep in mind also that, let's say you completely disagree on an issue that's personal to you, or maybe not related to after school services or after school programming, and you engage with your legislator. Just keep in mind that you may need that legislator for something else later, right? In the sense of you may agree to disagree with him or her, and just, it doesn't mean that that burns that whole relationship. So as you respectfully disagree with someone, I encourage you to use as much civility as possible to convey your concerns, and they're all valid concerns, I'm sure. But it's that idea that when someone calls you a name, I kind of like teach that to my 6-year-old, you're probably not going to get to play with them in the playground and be all happy. Like there are certain rules of engagement, and we encourage, I personally encourage people to engage in a way that is the same way you want to be treat those legislators, and they are being pulled in many directions. So that's one piece. The other one I will add is that there may be pieces of legislation that may not say after school per se on the statute, but that may have implications, right? Whether they're unintended consequences, good or bad, in your industry or your work area. I'll give an example. I'm running a piece of legislation to define the whole child and family development as a way of engaging everything from prenatal care all the way to 21, which of course, after school programming being a critical piece of the well-being of that child. So you may not see per se after school in the title of the bill, but just know that there may be pieces of legislation, and that's why you have the after school network, following those pieces of bills and legislation to keep an eye on that stuff. So you will probably be engaged at one point, I think, with regards to after school programming, if there's not a specific bill just addressing that issue. So that to me is important. The other one, I think Representative Romero mentioned during session, because it's thousands of bills and a budget of $23 billion, and we are only here for 7 weeks, we will, most legislators will absolutely prioritize on their constituents. So know that if you're a constituent, your chances of engaging with your legislator increases significantly versus trying to engage somebody else. And it doesn't mean that you don't connect with everyone. It means just think about the priorities for that legislator. And I suggest you always put on your subject line or in the beginning of a text, I am your constituent. I think that is very critical to get your emails, pump up on the priority of thousands of bills coming. And of course, as we are in multiple committees throughout the day in the session, we have interns that are amazing college students, which is who we will be meeting after this meeting, as Representative Romero mentioned. Our interns become kind of like your personal assistant for every state legislator. So if you want to also build good relationships, interns are only here during the session. There are college students that are getting credits from all of our universities across the state, and they're very qualified students that are, just ready, they're trained. This is actually a full-blown class for them. So multiple credits are, part of this process, and they become our personal aides or assistants through this whole process. So, you may hear from an intern. Let me be clear, that intern is just not someone that they got from out of high school just to do something. They are very key pieces of that legislator work and activity during the session. So I will say those are really just pieces to keep in mind. Another thing is the life of a bill. Those bills are not, so just keep in mind, if you're not following the bill correctly, and by the way, the legislative session website allows you to follow, and you get like updates on what's happening to the bill, because that bill is moving in a lifespan of those 7 weeks, and they change. So suggestion number one is, if you're going to send someone an email or a text about a bill, check if the bill is still even alive, one, that is in the right place that you're saying, right? Sometimes I just get HB 25 and I'm like, that's great. Can you give me a little more context? Maybe the title of the bill helps. So I know what we're talking about. Or if you're going to say, well, the substance abuse bill, there's about 100 of them. Can you give me the number too? So number and name of the bill as you're making reference to something is critical. And then getting to what you're trying to say. Now, if you're telling me about a bill, and you may have a concern about a specific bill that's starting in the House and is not even in the Senate yet, it may not be even in my radar at this point. It will eventually get here, but it may look very different from when it started in the House. So, that's the other piece is like, when I get people really upset about bills and I'm like, are you sure we're talking about the same bill? And they're like, oh, that has changed significantly. Sorry. I'm like, oh, just know that there's a reason why we have this, committee process and amendment process on the floor of the House. If it's a House bill, by the time it gets to the Senate, they probably already fixed many of those concerns, by the way. So as you're like just navigating, and of course it's very technical and you don't have to know all of this, just keep in mind, maybe just check the last status of that bill. Let's review the language before I say something that maybe was related to the initial drafting of that bill. And usually your organizations, in this case, the Utah Afterschool Network, will keep you updated on some of that stuff because bills do change, guys. They're not the same as they started. And sometimes because people get engaged, bills change. So I will probably end there so we can open for questions. I know we want to make sure we answer any questions or concerns from the group.
And also this is just to mention on that, you also have to keep the community organizations you're working with accountable, because a lot of times they won't read those bills either. And so they're working off of an old bill. And so that's why it's so important to have someone when you're working with an advocacy organization tracking the bill, tracking the changes and updating the information. So they're not misleading people into, saying something when it's not that anymore. But yeah, that's it.
Yes, Ben, you let us know how you want to proceed with the questions and answers. We're more than happy to do
Great,
that.
thank you so much. So yeah, let's go ahead and open it up to any questions that anyone has. While we have Senator Escamilla and Representative Romero, we do have a couple other slides that I'll share after we've gone through a few different questions, just to talk about SUMA UAN resources. So know that that's coming, but I know that they have to go shortly here. So let's take advantage of that. Rosalba, it looks like you've got a question.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much, Senator and Representative, for being here. I just kind of wanted to share a little bit, kind of an insight to my advocacy that I've done. Is the website is a great tool. I think it's the most accurate tool versus an advocacy group, and it's very user friendly. I just wanted to reiterate that. But also there's opportunities to sit on committees that I found very empowering, to see the process and to see really the work that you two do up there, and a lot of what happens and running back and forth between committee and committee. You two, I think, are very, very busy being a part of the House Minority Caucus, and really thank you for that work too, and really for advocating for after school. Now, the one question I do have is, I know that there's nothing really slated for after school program other than like continuing funding. What are some things, maybe not for this session, but for next year, if there is something that we would like to see or kind of expand on? What are some areas that you think and how we can do that?
I mean, I can jump, and I did mention my bill, and I have this. Yeah, no, well, this is kind of like important what you're saying, because part of it is I'm personally, I think I've seen best practices in other states where there's more of a comprehensive, holistic approach to the development of a child and family. And so I've actually just part of the maternal and child health fellowship program with NCSL. And I just spent a weekend just trying to figure out best practices. So I'll give you an example, because I think you guys appreciate this. I'm trying to see if I can put in this bill a universal consent form for parents to sign one form instead of 100 forms as our kiddos are navigating, K-12, LEAs, relationships with after school programs, maybe some services with, in health and human services. So like a more universal, and some states have done it and they've been through years of painful experiences to get there, that we can just like learn from what they've done and move to a best practice. So that's one example. The other one is the governor, and, I'm working right now on home visiting, and I know home visiting is obviously different from after school, but I'm seeing a pattern where we're trying to address right now prenatal care, postpartum care, moving to home visiting. And maybe, my goal, and like I said, because I did codified evidence-based after school programming in the state, is that we continue that kind of like spectrum or timeline of a child and get us to after school. I think the other question is, and you guys, a suggestion to your group is, you guys should be probably more engaged on the conversation of childcare, because I think there is a connection. It's not the same clearly, but it's this idea that if parents right now, the urgency is my 2-year-old, what do I do? We're seeing an increase on kiddos in very, unfortunately, like disproportionately impacting communities of color and other low-income working poor families, where we're seeing 16-year-olds dropping out of high school to take care of their siblings. By that, I mean little kiddos, because there's no childcare and they can't afford childcare. That's a crisis now in the state of Utah, guys. Like, so as we're trying to figure out this, like, it's on fire, after school program also is now seeing, as described, dire needs for, staffing and resources, maybe combining efforts to kind of like fix one piece as we're moving in this timeline of a child. It's my suggestion. I'm trying my best to make this a comprehensive approach to the life of a child and the welfare and development of a child. But I would love to see more of that coming, the cohesiveness, because what I see is like silos, right? So, I'm prenatal care, I'm home visiting, I am early childhood education, I'm childcare, I'm after school program, I'm K-12, only 8 to 3 p.m. We should, in my view, just combine that piece. So I'm sorry, that was like a long answer, Rosalba, for your question, but I feel very passionate about this. So,
Senator Escamilla, I would agree with you because, I've worked in after school care, my out of school time for my entire career outside of, policy work that I do outside of it. And when we're talking about daycare facilities and we're talking about out of school time and after school programming in general and summer programming, very, very different. And there are members in this legislature who will use them against each other. And I don't want to see our standards get weak for out of school time, after school care, because we want to accommodate daycare, because those are two different kinds of programming. And so I think it's important that we emphasize they're two different things. And I always worry about out of school time when we're talking about after school programs getting attacked, because there are people that don't understand the difference between the two. And so I think it would be important for us to work with that together, because I did have a conversation with someone in leadership in my chamber who doesn't understand everything and thinks we should just allow people to take care of more kids at home. And that frightens me. And so we have to be very, very proactive, not just on after school and getting after school funded, but also looking at some of these bills that expand people being able to take care of children at home because we don't have programs. We should be like maybe going, well, maybe we need more programs. Maybe we need to pay our staff a little bit more instead of having this culture where, it can be done at home, or let's send them to daycare. If anyone's had to send their kid to daycare and not being able to afford a nice daycare, you worry about your kid every day you leave them there, but you have to, and I know this because that was me at one time. I was a young parent and a single parent. And I want to make sure my child's getting the best care they can, and the best care that he ever received was in after school programming, not daycare. And so I think it's important for us to definitely work with the daycare providers, but it's also probably important for the after school network to look at what's coming before the legislature to make sure it doesn't hurt us and all the stuff and the work we do. And I'm done. I think there was another question. I think we're going to have to be heading off soon to the Senate building because I wore heels today, Luz, so it's going to take me longer to walk.
No worries. Was there another question that someone had? You can also throw it in the chat if you like. Sorry, go ahead.
Susie had one.
My hand is up, but I think it can be postponed. I think it's more of an offline conversation, Ben. So I'm the new family and community engagement specialist with USBE. And so hearing about home visits and breaking silos, it just made me think a lot about how we can start incorporating that. So I think maybe offline, Ben, Savannah, anyone that's interested, maybe thinking about how we can do some of that silo breaking and thinking about how we can start incorporating some of that. Also looking at day school alignment. So Lauren, including you in that conversation. But yeah, that it was less of a question, which is why I put my hand down.
Great. Thank you, Susie. I'm excited to talk more with you about all of that. And Senator Escamilla and Representative Romero, thank you so much for your time. It was really amazing getting to have you here and reflecting on a lot of the things that you do. We really appreciate your passion for all the work that we do. Thank you for everything that you do. We greatly appreciate you. So if we could get a collective virtual applause or party emoji from everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for all the work you guys do. You guys are on the front lines. You guys are the experts. Thank you for doing what you do every single day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. And if everyone else wants to stick around for another minute, I do have a couple other things to share before we part ways for today. So let me just share my screen again to go through a couple other things with you all here. Just to reiterate a few of the things that Representative and Senator shared with us today, and a couple other resources that we have internally at UAN. So to start off, we have an entire page on our website that is dedicated to advocacy. It's utahafterschool.org/advocacy. So if you go there, there are a number of different templates that you can use, email templates. There are guides for making a phone call. It can be a little intimidating when you call a legislator for the first time, knowing exactly what to say or how to talk to them about different things. And so we even have some phone call scripts there to help walk you through that process. So I'd encourage you to get in there and check that out, and let us know if you see anything that we need to update or anything along those lines. But we put as many resources in there as we could think of to help make that process easy for you. Something that I really appreciated being mentioned earlier today is that our legislative representatives they're all just people. You know, something I love about Angela Romero and Luz Escamilla is there, you know, I live in Rose Park, they represent me, and I see them all throughout the community. And something that helps to reinforce for me is that they're just people. They're people just like us who have day jobs, who have really, you know, jumped on this collective hand grenade for all of us to go out and fight for things that we all believe in. And so it's important to remember that the people that represent us are our representatives. They're not celebrities, as some unfortunately would maybe like to be recognized. But it's their job to listen to you, and it's their job to hear you out and to think about the things that are most important to you. And so take that in mind as you are reaching out to individuals. It's their job to hear you out. So don't take that lightly. Save the date. After School Day on the Hill is coming up on the 14th of February. We're going to get the registration link out for that next week, so that you can all join in on that. That will be in person at the state capitol on that day. We'll have a number of after school providers that will be there. We typically have some youth representatives who speak at that, as well as youth performances. There will be tabling opportunities for your organization to represent there. We'll also be doing some things and looking for opportunities for you to connect with your representatives there as well, depending on the day, the time and everything there. We may or may not have access to the representatives to be able to go and actually meet with them, just because it depends on what they have going on at that time. Currently, we have a window from 3 to 6 p.m. As we get the registration link out, we'll narrow that down a little bit, because there's some setup and cleanup time that's in that big block there, that we'll make sure you know all the details, but make sure that you've got that time set aside. We are excited that it's in the afternoon, and we'll encourage you to bring your kids to this event as well. In our positions as after school providers, we're not only advocating for our programs, but it's a really amazing educational opportunity for the youth that they serve to help introduce them to this process and to help them meet their legislators, and to understand how to engage in this way. So I really love that we shared the link to find your representatives as well, to identify your legislature. Some ideas for you to reach out and engage with them, make an appointment to speak with them, talk about your program, talk about what you do. We have a number of issues that are really relevant right now and that are really pressing in supporting academic gains, helping youth recover from the pandemic slide that we encountered as we've seen academic performance for a number of youth slip, and in the after school world, we're able to directly impact that. Mental health of youth and programs or supporting positive behavior. Full day kindergarten is actually something that will be big this legislative session, where they are pushing for full day kindergarten this session. That is something that impacts us in after school programs. As Angela Romero mentioned, we have kids that are needing to step into their own family childcare roles. And that's one of the gaps that we see, is where there's not full day kindergarten available for kids. That's a gap that needs to be covered. Or it's also creating, more opportunities for kids to be at home alone during those hours, either before or after their kindergarten class starts. So that's something we want to advocate for. And a big one that I think everyone is facing right now is after school staffing. A lot of you are operating in an understaffed situation right now, where you're not able to operate at full capacity. That's a really big deal, because that's impacting the number of available slots you have in your programs. That's something that is impacting our workforce. And as much as we can tie things into our workforce, the better, because that's one of our big drivers in Utah is our workforce, and making sure that people are empowered to do those things, and accounting for the fact that we have a very diverse makeup of what parenting looks like in Utah, where not everyone is in, a relationship where one parent is able to stay at home while the other is working to take care of the kids. And we are all very aware of that, but we have to remind our legislators of the fact that we have single parent families, we have families that are working throughout the night, working multiple jobs as well, that aren't able to act as caregivers for their own children during those hours. So we want to help them be able to stay in work, and make sure that the care we provide is affordable and sustainable, and that we're compensating our employees. Make an appointment with your legislator, call them to voice your concerns about different things, send an email or a personal letter. A wonderful activity for you to do in your after school program with your youth is to have your kids send a postcard. We've done in past years, because after school day on the Hill takes place on the 14th, it's Valentine's Day. Have your kids send a Valentine's card to their legislature, talking about why they love their program. And something that is deeply impactful is inviting them to your programs. This isn't something I would advocate that you try to do during the legislative session, because it's very busy. But a lot of our work, a lot of the really impactful work that we do happens during the interim session outside of the legislature, where you can invite them into your program, invite them to come and help serve food or run an activity or play dodgeball with the kids, or any number of different things to help them to see the impacts that are actually happening in your programs. And we have seen legislatures who have been swayed by this in the past, where we had someone, several years back who was staunchly not in the corner of after school programs. And after he had an opportunity to go and serve Kids Cafe in an after school program, he actually testified in favor of a bill that increased funding for after school programs, because he directly saw the impacts that were happening there. And these are all things that contribute to you building the relationships with your legislatures. And lastly, keep us in the loop. If you invite someone to your program, someone from UAN would love to come and be there as well. I would love to come and join you to help fill in some national context, or help to fill in other gaps of information, just to help you have that conversation with those individuals. So definitely let us know if you're having a visit. We'd love to be there and would love to support you in that. Or even if you don't invite us, I'm more than happy to jump on a call or a Zoom meeting with you to run through some talking points with you to talk about what you'd like to highlight for your program, what may be most important to a specific legislature, and what may help you get some traction with them as well. Read up on the issues. There are a number of different places that you can keep track of what is happening within the legislature or in society that is impacting after school programming. The After School Alliance is probably one of the best places that you can go to keep tabs on what is impacting us in the after school and childcare and youth development fields. They are regularly tracking bills federally, and they actually do a wonderful job of tracking them on a state-by-state level as well. And so I really stay in close contact with them throughout the year, and they give us a lot of guidance on different things. They also have a really great blog that's called After School Snack, where they break down a lot of things that are happening. So they can help give you some context on what's happening with federal funding that's happening, or anything in the after school sphere. So definitely check them out. The National After School Association, similarly, they're not as big of an advocacy organization, but they still have their finger on the pulse of what is happening, can help to connect you with other programs that might be doing things and share examples and successes. And they're actually doing a lot of work right now around supporting the after-school workforce in helping to elevate the field as a whole. Subscribe to our newsletter. UAN sends out a monthly newsletter that has policy updates, different updates on trends or things that we have happening in the state. Subscribe to it and open it. We have a lot of people that receive it, but only a small percentage of the people that get the thing actually open it up and click on the links in there. So I encourage you to do that. I know you can feel bogged down by a lot of newsletters or a lot of email that comes in your inbox, but this one is important. It directly impacts you. And we try to put a lot of work into that, making sure that it's relevant and it's important information that you can use, as well as following us on social media, where again, we're sharing out regular resources, news, and updates. When something interesting comes from the After School Alliance, we try to share that as much as we possibly can. And we'll really be closely monitoring the legislature this year. Any bills that are impacting after school programs, we'll be sharing out and helping to make sure that you're all as informed as possible on all of those things there as well. This QR code is a link tree to our website, to register for different UAN events, as well as follow us on social media as well. So we encourage you to use that and follow us in all the ways that you can. So that's everything for us for today. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. It was great to be able to meet with Senator Escamilla and Representative Romero. Again, I'm really appreciative of them. I would encourage you, if you're in their district, to drop them a note and let them know that it was important to you that they were able to take the time to show the support for these programs. And even, send a message to someone, to your representative in your district as well, and let them know, hey, we've got these people that really care about these programs that are very important to us. And something else that is a good strategy as well as you're reaching out is a lot of you live and work in separate districts. Take advantage of that for your own outreach as well. So like UAN's office is in a different district than where I live. And so as I'm doing outreach to different representatives, I'll let them know, hey, my place of business is located in your district, or I'm working with a number of youth that live in your district, and these are issues that are directly impacting them. So then you can broaden the reach of your messaging as well, as one final thing to leave you all with. We'll continue to share different resources. There's actually a national training that will be coming up here in the next week or so that will be talking about the difference between advocating and educating for your after school programs. Lobbying and advocating for your programs. A lot of us are working in nonprofit organizations, and we cannot lobby with certain dollars that we receive. So we have to be careful in how we're using different types of language in advocating for our programs. And so that's something that we can dive a little bit more deeply into. And we'll continue to share different resources for you, as well as information on that upcoming webinar that will be happening as well. Any last questions or comments in the last couple of minutes that we have here?
Ben, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Darlene Dixon. I'm with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Salt Lake. And I just really wanted to thank you, Ben, for putting this together. I've been with the clubs for, 4 decades, and I've never gotten involved in this aspect. And so this opportunity is really great. And this was super helpful to me. So thank you so much for putting
That's
this.
great, Dar. I'm really happy to have you on board. And we do have a policy committee. If you're interested in joining us on the policy committee as well, there's actually in the link tree that I shared last time, there you can register for a policy committee there, which has people from all over the state that are working together. We're actually working to plan our advocacy day on the Hill. We're meeting this Friday to talk about that and get things in the works. So if you'd like to be more engaged, we do have opportunities to do that. We love your support and would love to work more closely with everybody on all these initiatives. So thanks everybody for your time. I really appreciate you all being here. We'll share out a copy of this recording as we wrap up here as well. Did you have one last thing to say, Rosalba?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, email and use that link that I shared and email your representatives. The more representatives that are in the state, you know, everybody's politics are different. And I think it was important that Angela shared. It's okay to reach across the aisle, even if you don't know them. Just send them an email and say, hey, I'm with After School Care. This is what I do. And this is why it's important. Because a lot of times what I find is that they are very unaware, right? Like constituents are just adults, not students. And so when you speak on behalf of students and for a program, it largely will open and broaden the conversation. So when Senator Luz Escamilla does come up with this bill, another senator that she may have not interacted with yet maybe already be aware because of you reaching out to them. So I think it's important, and I'm going to emphasize that again, is reach out to your legislator. The more people that are aware, the more eyes and support that we will have. And I think that's what's important here, especially for me. Like I love after school programs, and I will continue to advocate for after school programs, even at the municipality level. But I think at the state level, we haven't had this form of advocacy for a long time. And I think it's really important. So just contact them, find out who they are at the policy, reach out to the policy committee. If you can't find them, we would be more than happy to find them for you as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
that's
the
all I had to say.
individuals-
It's just reemphasize that. Contact your state legislature.
Thank you, Rosalba. Yeah, the individuals that we tend to disagree with the most are the ones that need to hear from us the most. So
And surprisingly will support us. Like
Mhm.
I've been in committees and they're like, you know what? My constituent contacted me about this. I'm going to support it. And that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
We
it's surprisingly
represent kids.
that changes. It makes a difference.
Sounds good. Thank you all so much. Well, I'll let you go now. We will follow up with a recording of this training as well that we encourage you to share with other members of your teams and all that good stuff. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.